for those of you who've come in a little bit late, we've had 3 excellent papers so far, part of this substantive discussion. After the 5th paper, Professor Felix Wilfred will say something maybe mildly in response and also say more about the journal. And then again, if you're making your plans for the evening, immediately afterwards we'll have a reception thanks to Brill and Tessel Junkier is here.
Right.
Oh yes, who's
yeah,
very good at
oh,
arranging
good.
a very convenient reception across the street.
She will explain.
Basically go out across Boylston Street to the Back Bay Social Club after this ends at 6 o'clock. So you're all welcome to come across the street. We look forward to that happy occasion as well. So without further ado, to move to our 4th paper, Professor Sebastian Perus is a research professor at the Central Asia program in the Institute for European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies at George Washington University, and a senior fellow at the East-West Institute. He worked for 5 years in Central Asia at the French Institute for Central Asian Studies in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and his main areas of expertise are political systems in Central Asia, economic and social issues, Islam and religious minorities, and Central Asia's geopolitical positioning toward China, India, and South Asia. And his paper today will be Christianity and Ethnicity in Soviet and Post-Soviet Central Asia, Mutual Intrusions and Instrumentalisations. So let's welcome Professor Perus.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we move indeed from Indonesia to Central Asia, so well, very different region. I mean, Central Asia comprises, I mean, for those who don't know the region, it is 5 countries: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. I specify that as I have only 15-18 minutes, contrary to what is written in the title, I will concentrate on the post-Soviet period. I won't really have time to address the Soviet time. And well, again, for those who don't know Central Asia, the Central Asian republics count many Christian churches. The main one is a Russian Orthodox Church. But I mean, the region has also many other Christian churches, like the Catholic Church, the Armenian Church, many Protestant minorities. And in Central Asia, in this region, most Christians consist of Slavic European minorities, that is Russians, Germans, Poles, Greeks, who came in this region during the Russian colonization from the 18th and 19th centuries. But you have also other nationalities in the Christian communities, in a more, I would say, in a more modestly. For example, you have Koreans and you have Armenians. But, and this is a new phenomenon, this is a very interesting phenomenon, I mean, after the fall of the Soviet Union, is that more and more natives, I mean Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, and Tajiks, have been converted to Christianity. Many, especially Protestant missions, have been very active among, I mean, Kazakhs and Kyrgyz, I mean, in Kazakhstan and in Kyrgyzstan especially. So what I will try to present very briefly today is how religion and ethnicity have been linked in Central Asia after the fall of the Soviet Union. How such links have been materialized, how they have been instrumentalized by Christian denominations, but also by many Muslims and by the political authorities of these countries. So first, well, churches are, of course, for a number of believers, meeting place for ethnic minorities who share not only a faith, but also the same culture. For example, Russian culture, German culture, or whatever. But this link between religion and ethnicity in Central Asia goes much further than a place of worship where people belonging to the same national minorities can meet. And I will try to address 2 points here. First, ethnicity has been an essential argument for some Christian movements, and I would say especially for the Russian Orthodox Church, to justify, to legitimate their presence in Central Asia, not only with regards to Muslims, but also to other Christian movements, and more precisely to justify a precedence over other Christian movements. Again, the Russian Orthodox Church, which is by far the main Christian church in Central Asia, asserts an intrinsic link between every Russian and the Oriental Christianity, whatever he is a believer or not. So a Russian would be connected to Christian Orthodoxy, not only as a religion, but as a part of the Russian culture. This tie between Russian and religion is emphasized by the notion of canonical territory. This would concern, according to the Russian Orthodox Church, the entire post-Soviet space. This means that everywhere on the space which used to be dominated by Russia, a Christian would have to be Orthodox. There would be only two exceptions. First, people originating from the non-Slavic ex-Soviet republics whose history and culture are bound to another Christian denomination, for example, the Armenian Church for the Armenians or the Georgian Church for the Georgians. And second, the second exception is people whose nationality is culturally bound to a church situated beyond the borders of the former Soviet Union. This means that the Catholic presence is accepted for Poles and for Germans, for part of the Germans, the Lutheran Church for the other part of Germans. But the activities of the churches, according to the Russian Orthodox Church, would have to be limited. They should not have any right to proselytism. This means that the conversion of Russians to a denomination different from Orthodox Christianity is considered as unacceptable. And another very important point for the Russian Orthodox Church is that anybody belonging to traditional Muslim ethnicities, that is, to titular eponymous nationalities like Uzbeks, Kazakhs, Tajiks, but also to minorities like Azeris or Uyghurs, and so on, should be Muslim and should not be converted to Christianity. So, however, and this will be my second point, many Protestant movements have challenged this principle by converting, as I said, not only Russians, but also Muslims. Since perestroika, the autochthonous population actually has been the target of Christian movements which were already, some of them were already present in the region during Soviet times, but also of new missionaries, who came after the fall of the Soviet Union from Europe, from the United States, from Southern Korea. And let's say, for example, today in Kyrgyzstan, where proselyte movements have been quite active since the mid-90s, there have been over 20,000 ethnic Kyrgyz converted to Christianity. This is, of course, a very small percentage of the population, but the conspicuous actions of both missionaries and converts have really turned evangelical, especially evangelical movements, evangelical Christianity, into a very visible factor. So, the question is how a proselytizing Protestant movement justify conversion of non-German and non-Polish people. First, all movements present in the Soviet period had to face a main issue, that is the European population's immigration. Many Russians, after the fall of the Soviet Union, many Russian, Germans, and other minorities left the region who view independence and economic difficulties in Central Asia as a threat for their status, for their future within the states. And, of course, this immigration has been a major handicap for the Christian denominations, which so far mainly consisted, as I already said, of European minorities and which therefore lost many of its believers. And this led actually to the closure of several Protestant parishes, including in the big cities where European populations were concentrated. And this pushed, of course, many Christian churches to try to bring new people into their parishes. Second, the conversion for Protestant proselytizing movement, the conversion not only of Russians, but of Kyrgyz, Kazakh, Uzbeks to Protestantism would confirm Christianity's universalism. But in Central Asia, by doing that, Protestant missionaries had to respond to a widespread argument, which is that Christianity is often viewed as a foreign religion, that is a religion of Russians or Germans or from Western countries too. So several movements have strived to reshape this relation between religion and a local ethnic identity. And the analysis of evangelical missionary work in Central Asia reveals two often implicit basic logics that underlie their activities. That is, first, de-Russifying Christianity, and second, Central Asianizing Christianity. Since independence, I've very often heard in interviews with Central Asian Muslims that Christianity is a foreign religion or Jesus is a Russian god. So Christianity is often associated with the memory of the Russian Orthodox Church in the region, and also with people practicing a foreign worship, such as icons or crossing themselves. So among Central Asian Muslims, these images often arouse some kind of negative perceptions. So many Christian movements have tried to de-Russify Christianity, first by exhibiting their dissimilarity from Orthodox Christianity, this was actually not very difficult to do because the service of evangelical congregations are very different, of course, from the Orthodox services. But this differentiation effort has gone further. We have seen that some evangelical movements avoid, for example, the word Christian because of its Russian religious connotations, and instead talk about followers of Jesus. And this has also led to a de-Russification of some religious or biblical terms which have been replaced with Turkic or Arabic equivalents. For example, the Russian word Biblia has often been substituted with the Arabic word Injil, which means Gospel or New Testament. Then the next step is to Central Asianize Christianity, to Kazakify or to Kyrgyzify, I don't know if we can say that, but to Kyrgyzify as Christianity. And we have seen more and more missionaries, and I would say especially young missionaries, who claim to value the preservation of Kyrgyz or Kazakh ethnic cultures among converted people. So, for example, the setup in several churches, for example, was arranged to stress some specific aspects of local culture. For example, in many churches, you see everyone, including the pastor, sitting on felt carpet, on the shirdak, which is a traditional Kyrgyz carpet. So sitting on the floor, songs are sung in Kazakh or Kyrgyz. Some typical Central Asian musical instruments are used to play the music. So by doing that, the missionaries try to convince that the Christian message is for everyone, that all cultures are equal or equally special. So the kind of culture that evangelicals promote is a Central Asian in form and Christian in content. Christianity is not Russian, is not foreign, but Christianity would be universal, and this Christian universalism does not intend to break the link between religion and ethnicity, since Christianity can be also, according to the missionaries, Kyrgyz or Uzbeks or Kazakh, etc. And this quick development of foreign Christian missions after independence and the conversions of natives have aroused some hostile reactions among the Muslim population and among the ulemas. Let me specify here, however, this is a very important point, that an immense majority of Central Asian Muslims are extremely tolerant to Christianity or any other religions. But pressure, I mean, I've really noticed that since the beginning of the 90s, pressures have grown against the religious movements whose proselytism is considered as too obvious. And against, I quote actually, there's two smiling guests whose essential goal is to divide the Muslim peoples or against dominations which, and again I quote, give a meal from one hand and a Bible with the other. And Christian proselyte movements are also accused, some Christian proselyte movements are accused of taking people away from their own religion and cultural traditions. A majority of Uzbeks or Kazakhs or Kyrgyz link their national identity with Islam, and the conversion to another religion is seen as a betrayal of their country, of their ethnicity and ancestors, and therefore of their family. And I have heard from Central Asians that they sincerely doubted that whether a converted Kyrgyz or a converted Uzbek should still be considered as an Uzbek or as a Kyrgyz. And well, some evangelical groups have been also accused of stealing the cultural makers of the Muslims. Let me give you here very briefly one example. Some evangelical movements, for example, have used the rite of circumcision and have organized some circumcision celebration in order to bring together Christianity as perceived by these movements and Muslim traditions. So increasing controversies in Central Asia provoked by the conversions of Central Asians have translated first into growing tensions and sometimes violent incidents between Muslims and proselyte movements. Second, in the banishment of converts from families and their communities, and in attempts to bring converts back to their native religion. And third, into increasingly pressures placed by Islamic institutions on the political authorities to tighten up, to restrict the freedom of religion, and especially of proselytism. And so the allegedly link between ethnicity and religion advocated by the Orthodox Church and by Muslims have had an impact on how religious movements are managed and sorted by the political authorities in Central Asia and on the legislative and on the legislation, on proselytism. This has led Central Asian governments to adopt and revise their rhetoric. All of them distinguish between traditional religions on the one hand and non-traditional religion on the other hand, which are actually often presented as extremist movements or sects or whatever. So the traditional movement would be a religion of the titular population and of the major national minorities present in the country. As I said, the Orthodox Church or the Lutheran Church, and who have a historical presence in Central Asia since the 19th century. Whereas so-called non-traditional movements or sects are generally the new religious movements, including evangelical movements, who by destroying the link between religion and ethnic minorities, and ethnic identity, would threaten social stability and would challenge the independence of the republic. I quote the political authorities, of course, that's not me. And this had an impact on some aspects of religious legislation. I mean, religious freedom has been largely restricted since independence, especially for proselytizing movements. So I will conclude by two very short points. First, these rules, and I just mentioned, and their applications vary a lot from one country to another in Central Asia. Some, like Kyrgyzstan, are being much more tolerant than others, like Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. And in Central Asia, unlike some other Muslim countries, Christianity is not discriminated in its rule, since orthodoxy there is fully recognized, but through some specific denominations viewed as foreign and then as considered as dangerous movements, dangerous because they precisely challenge the link between ethnicity and religion and would therefore damage the stability of the country. I stop here. Thank you very much.